Lydia saw the photo at 6:47 in the morning. She hadn't even made coffee yet. She was standing in the kitchen in her socks, phone in hand, scrolling out of habit. The kind of scrolling you do when your brain isn't awake but your thumbs already are. And then she stopped. It was a bedroom, not just any bedroom. It was their bedroom. The one she and her husband had spent 3 weekends choosing furniture for. The one with the pale gray walls she'd repainted twice because the first shade was too cold. The bedside table with the small ceramic lamp. The window with the linen curtains. Everything exactly where she'd left it. And in the mirror, holding the phone up, smiling like she owned the place. A woman Lydia had never seen before. The caption read, "Some mornings are just better than others." Lydia set her phone face down on the counter. She stood there for a long moment. Outside, a garbage truck moved slowly down the street. A neighbor's dog barked twice, then stopped. She picked the phone back up and looked again, because some part of her needed to be absolutely sure she wasn't still half asleep, wasn't misreading the geography of her own home. But no, that was the lamp. That was the curtain. That was the small chip in the corner of the mirror frame that she'd been meaning to fix for 2 years. Her husband, Kevin Lassiter, was at a conference in Ottawa. He had been gone since Thursday. It was Saturday. Lydia Brennan Lassiter was 38 years old. She had spent the last 11 years building something she believed in. A marriage, a home, 2 children who were, at this moment, asleep upstairs. Owen, 9, and Fern, 6. She worked 4 days a week at a landscape architecture firm in downtown Hamilton. Kevin ran a mid-size logistics company, the kind of company that was always almost thriving. They had a joint account and a shared calendar and a standing Saturday morning routine where he made eggs and she made coffee, and they read the paper together while the kids watched cartoons. She had thought, and she would later describe this as the most embarrassing part, that they were fine. Not extraordinary, not the kind of couple strangers envied at restaurants. But fine, solid, the kind of fine that was supposed to mean something. She did not call Kevin that morning. She didn't cry either, which surprised her. She made coffee. She got the kids up and made them oatmeal. She helped Fern find her library book and listened to Owen explain, at length, the rules of a video game she would never understand. She smiled at the right moments. She answered questions. She did all of this while something inside her was very, very quiet. The particular quiet that comes just before a person makes a decision. The woman in the photo was named Hazel Ostrander. It didn't take long to find her. A quick search of the hashtags in her other posts, a few mutual connections, and there she was. Lifestyle content, sponsored posts for a vitamin brand, 12,000 followers. Her bio said she was based in Burlington. She was 29. She had a cheerful, consistent aesthetic, morning light, linen sheets, artisan coffee cups. She posted often and with apparent joy. She had, apparently, been posting from Lydia's bedroom. Lydia looked through her recent posts more carefully. There were others. A photo of flowers. Yellow tulips Lydia didn't recognize. In a vase Lydia did. A flat lay of what looked like takeout containers on their coffee table. A candle burning in the background. That specific candle Lydia had bought from a small shop in Stratford on their last anniversary trip. It had been a Tuesday. Kevin had said he was at a client dinner. Lydia closed the app. She sat at the kitchen table while her children ate oatmeal, and she thought. Not emotionally, but practically. The way she thought through projects at work. The way she assessed a site before designing anything. About what she actually knew, what she could verify, and what her options were. She was by nature and by training someone who thought before she acted. This had always served her well. It served her now. Kevin came home Sunday afternoon. He hugged the kids. He asked how the weekend had been. He said the conference was long but productive. He set his bag down by the stairs, poured himself a glass of water, and leaned against the counter with the easy looseness of someone who believed nothing had changed. "How was your drive back?" Lydia asked. "Fine. Traffic on the 403 was a bit rough." She nodded. She handed him the mail. She went upstairs to help Fern with a bath. She did not say anything about what she knew. Not yet. There is a particular skill that some people develop without knowing they have it. The ability to function completely normally on the outside, while processing something devastating on the inside. Lydia had always assumed this was a form of denial. She understood now that it wasn't. It was strategy. It was the difference between reacting and responding. It was the thing that would, in a few weeks, save her from making the kind of scene that looks satisfying in the moment and cost you everything afterwards. She called a lawyer on Monday. A friend from university had gone through a difficult divorce 3 years earlier and had recommended someone. A woman named Patricia Ewan, who worked out of an office near Loxley Street. Lydia made an appointment for Wednesday and told Kevin she had a client meeting. She gathered documents quietly, efficiently, the way she approached any project. Financial records, account statements, the mortgage, their wills. She photographed Hazel Ostrander's Instagram posts, timestamped, geotagged, unmistakable, and saved them in a folder on a cloud account Kevin didn't know existed. She told no one, not her sister, not her best friend Margot, the real one, from work, who would have immediately wanted to do something about it, loudly. Not her mother, who would have cried and made it about herself. Not anyone. She was not ready to let the story exist in other people's mouths. Not yet. What she was doing, in those 2 weeks of silence, was building a foundation. She had learned, from years of landscape architecture, that everything visible depends entirely on what you put underneath. You can have the most beautiful garden in the world, but if the drainage is wrong, if the soil composition is off, if the root system has nowhere to go, it will fall apart eventually. It always does. She was getting the foundation right. Patricia Ewan was clear-eyed and direct, and did not waste her time with reassurances. She outlined what a separation would look like, what Lydia was entitled to, what documentation would help, and what the next steps were if Lydia decided to proceed. She also said, without being asked, that it was worth taking a few weeks to be certain before doing anything irreversible. "You don't have to decide today," she said. "I know," Lydia said. "I've already decided. I just want to do this correctly." Patricia looked at her for a moment. "All right," she said. "Then let's talk about what correctly looks like." Hazel Ostrander, meanwhile, was not being quiet. She had never been quiet about anything, which was, perhaps, the quality that had first attracted Kevin to her, or the quality that would end up costing her everything, depending on how you looked at it. In the 3 weeks following the bedroom photo, she posted 3 more pictures that Lydia catalogued without comment. One from what appeared to be a restaurant Kevin frequented, one that included his car in the background of a parking lot shot, and one, the one that finally crossed a line even Hazel may not have fully understood. That was a short video. 30 seconds. Posted at 11:30 on a Wednesday night. Hazel, sitting on what was clearly Lydia's living room sofa, the blue-green one, the one they'd had since before Fern was born, holding a glass of wine, saying to the camera, "When he makes you feel like the main character." She had tagged a location, a restaurant 2 streets away. Owen and Fern had been on that sofa that morning, watching cartoons. This was the moment something shifted in Lydia, not from hurt to anger, from patience to action. She did not call Kevin that night. She went upstairs and checked on her children. She sat on the edge of Fern's bed in the dark and listened to her breathe for a while. Then she went to her home office, opened her laptop, and began to think. The idea came to her the way most good ideas come, sideways, out of something unrelated. She had been looking at promotional opportunities for a community garden project her firm was working on, and she had clicked through to a local advertising platform that managed outdoor digital displays. Hamilton had several. One in particular was in a high-traffic corridor near the waterfront, visible from the highway ramp, from the GO bus stop, from 3 coffee shops, and a gym and a farmer's market that drew several thousand people on weekend mornings. She looked at the pricing. She looked at the availability. She looked at the specifications for the display file. She sat very still for a long moment. Then she opened a new document and began to write. She did not rush. She thought about it the way she thought about any design problem. What is the core message? What do you want the viewer to feel? How much space do you actually need to say it? She had spent her career learning that clarity was harder than complexity, that the most powerful designs were almost always the simplest ones, that the instinct to add more was almost always wrong. She needed 4 words. He brought her home. Not an accusation. Not a name. Not anything that could be dismissed as a breakdown or a tantrum. Just a fact. The most devastating facts are always just facts. She booked the display for 2 weeks. She paid from a personal account she'd opened the previous month. She uploaded a clean black background, white text, simple sans serif font. She did not include Kevin's name. She did not include Hazel's name. She did not include her own. She did not need to. The display went live on a Thursday morning at 7 a.m. By 8:30, someone had photographed it and posted it to a local Facebook group. By 10, it had been shared 47 times. By noon, a local radio host had read it on air, laughing first and then going quiet, saying, "Actually, I don't know if that's funny. I think that might just be devastating." A food blogger who lived near the waterfront posted it to her Instagram stories with the caption, "Whoever did this, I hope you're okay, and also I hope you're not okay because this energy is necessary." It spread the way things spread, not because it was loud, but because it was precise. There is something about a statement that contains only the truth and nothing extra that people recognize immediately. It doesn't ask for sympathy. It doesn't explain itself. It simply stands there and waits for you to understand. Lydia was at work when it started. She heard about it from a colleague who sent her a screenshot without any context, just a question mark, not realizing, how could he have known? She looked at the screenshot. She looked at her screen for a moment. Then she went back to work. Kevin called at noon. She let it go to voicemail. He called again at 12:15. She answered. "I'm in a meeting," she said. "I'll call you tonight." She was not in a meeting. She did call him that night after the kids were in bed. She sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, and she called him and she said, "I think we need to talk." The conversation that followed was not the kind of conversation that movies prepare you for. There were no dramatic speeches. There was no throwing of objects. Kevin did not confess with a particular remorse that would have made forgiveness feel like a possibility. He was defensive first, then deflective, then briefly sorry in the way people are sorry when they've been caught, rather than when they've genuinely understood what they've done. He wanted to know who she'd told. He wanted to know about the billboard. He said it was an invasion of his privacy, which she did not bother to answer, because she found that she was no longer particularly interested in arguing with him. "I've already spoken to a lawyer," she said when there was a pause. "I want you to find somewhere else to stay starting next week. I'd like to do this without more drama if possible. For the kids." Kevin went quiet. "Did you hear me?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "I heard you." The kids were told on a Sunday afternoon, sitting at the kitchen table with both parents. Lydia had thought carefully about this, how much to say, how to say it, where to sit, whether to hold someone's hand. She had read 3 different resources for parents navigating separation, and she had talked it through with a family therapist named Dr. Aisha Mwamba, who had a gentle and practical manner and who had helped Lydia figure out how to answer the questions that children actually ask, as opposed to the ones adults think they'll ask. Owen asked if they would have to move. Fern asked if it was because she'd broken the kitchen window with the soccer ball in August. Both of these questions broke something open in Lydia's chest quietly, the way the first crack in ice sounds. Not loud, just final, she answered carefully. She held Fern's hand. She told them, and she meant every word, that nothing about this was their fault, that they were loved by both their parents, that some things change and some things don't, and the things that mattered most were the ones that didn't. After the kids had gone outside to play, Kevin sat across from Lydia at the empty table and said, very quietly, "I didn't think you'd actually do it." She wasn't sure if he meant the billboard or the lawyer or the conversation they'd just had with their children. "I know," she said. She got up and started clearing the cups. By the end of that week, 2 local news sites had written brief items about the billboard. Neither named anyone. One framed it as a commentary on public accountability in the age of social media. The other took a lighter tone, interviewing passers-by about whether they thought it was art or grievance or both. One older woman interviewed near the farmer's market said, "Honestly, I think it's just honest. Sometimes honest is the loudest thing you can do." Hazel Ostrander deleted her Instagram account 5 days after the billboard went up. Lydia noticed because she'd been watching, and then she stopped watching because it no longer mattered. People at Lydia's firm had questions. She answered them once, simply, and then redirected the conversation. Her manager, a fair-minded man who had never once in 12 years asked her anything personal, stopped by her desk to say, with visible discomfort, "I just wanted to check in." She told him she was fine, and thanked him and meant both things only partly. Her sister called. Her mother called. Margot came over with wine and didn't ask anything, which was exactly what Lydia needed. They sat on the back porch and watched the neighborhood get dark, and Margot said eventually, "I always thought he was a bit smug." Lydia laughed. It was the first time she'd laughed in 3 weeks, and it surprised her, the way laughter sometimes does. Like finding a window open in a room you'd thought was sealed. The separation was processed without significant conflict. Kevin moved into an apartment in Stony Creek. He had the kids every second weekend and one evening a week. He and Lydia communicated primarily through a co-parenting app, and when necessary, through their respective lawyers. Patricia Yuan was efficient and unemotional, and handled everything with the kind of competence that made Lydia grateful she'd made that phone call when she had. There were hard days. Of course there were. There were mornings when Owen was quiet, in a way that had nothing to do with being tired, and evenings when Fern cried about something small that wasn't really about the small thing, and nights when Lydia lay awake, doing the accounting of all the things she hadn't seen coming, and wondering what that said about her. She had these nights, and she did not pretend she didn't. She talked about them with Dr. Mwamba. She talked about them, eventually, with Margot, and with her sister, and with one of the other mothers at Fern School, who had been through something similar 4 years earlier, and who said, with complete matter-of-factness, "The first year is the one you survive. The second year is the one you actually live." She held on to that. She also, during those months, did something she had been meaning to do for years. She applied for a lead architect position at a larger firm in Toronto. She had been considering it, in the vague way you consider things you're afraid of, for nearly 3 years. She had always found a reason to wait. She did not wait now. She got the position. It started in January. She told the kids over dinner on a Tuesday, pasta, Fern's request, that things were going to change a little, that she had a new job starting in the new year, that it was something she was really proud of. Owen said, "Cool," with the particular sincerity that 9-year-olds manage when they actually mean it. Fern asked if the new job had a better kitchen than the old one. Lydia said she'd find out and report back. She drove past the waterfront one morning in late November, on her way to a site visit for a project she was finishing before the new job started. The digital display was showing a grocery store ad, a cheerful image of root vegetables, text about seasonal savings. She slowed at the light and looked at it for a moment. There was nothing left there of what she'd put up. The display rotated as displays do. The world moved on. That was fine. That was the nature of the thing. You make something visible. It does what it needs to do, and then the space opens up for whatever comes next. She had not put the billboard up to hurt Kevin, though she understood if people assumed that. She had not put it up to humiliate Hazel, though she understood if people assumed that too. She had put it up because she had spent 2 weeks watching someone treat her home like it was unclaimed territory. Like she didn't exist in it, like the life she'd built was just scenery. And she had needed, quietly and without performance, to say, "I'm here. I see what's happening, and I am not going to pretend that I don't." 4 words, a black background, simple font. It had been enough. The light changed. She drove. The city was just starting to come awake. Coffee shops opening. A few joggers on the trail by the lake. A dog pulling its owner toward a particularly interesting patch of grass. A normal morning in a city she had lived in for most of her adult life. She thought about January. About the new office, the new projects, the commute she'd have to figure out, the conversations she hadn't yet had. She thought about Owen's hockey schedule and whether she could get Fern into the Saturday art class she'd been asking about. She thought about a lot of things. She did not think about Kevin. Not with bitterness, not with longing. She thought about him the way you think about a road you no longer travel. Not with regret exactly, just with a passing awareness that once you went that way, and now you don't, and the place you're going now requires a different route. She was not there yet, but she was on her way. That, she was beginning to understand, was the whole point. Not the billboard, not the lawyer, not the version of events that had spread across Facebook and been read out on the radio by someone who didn't know her name. Those were just the moments other people saw. The actual thing, the thing that mattered, was quieter and slower and belonged entirely to her. She was still figuring out what she was building. But she'd always been good at that. Better, maybe, than she'd given herself credit for. She turned onto the highway and headed toward the site. The sun was low and bright, the kind of autumn light that makes everything look slightly more significant than it is. She put on the radio. A song she liked was just beginning. She turned it up.